Welcome to Obsessed, where Mika, Tia, and I challenge the thoughts that limit you, where we provide the tools for transformation. Be prepared to be swept away into the raw power of obsession, unlocking secrets and stories behind the insatiable hunger for growth and change. This is more than just a podcast. This is your story. It is a manifesto for those who refuse to settle, who dare to dream, and who are relentless in the pursuit of living a great life. Get obsessed with your life. Do you know who is relentless in the pursuit of living a great life? It's Sonia Chand, and she is here to help us celebrate Autism Acceptance Month, which is the month of April. And I think for me, and there are probably a lot of parents right now listening, people who have friends that are on the spectrum or have family members on the spectrum. I think there is a misnomer in terms of being on the spectrum, ASD, Asperger's, and the whole realm of different titles in terms of autism. And I know Sonia will clarify this for us because we want to become experts and the biggest advocates for autism, as we are obsessed with doing that. I think there are a lot of misnomers, and going back 20, 30 years ago, what did I think of autism? I thought of people that couldn't talk. I thought of people flapping their arms. I thought of people who didn't know how to express themselves, people who were relegated or institutionalized. And I know I'm wrong about this, but this is how far we've come since the 1990s. And in the 1990s, 1 in 150 children were diagnosed with ASD. Now, in the year 2024, 1 in 36 children are diagnosed with ASD. There is a huge discrepancy in these numbers. And I know we have Sonia Chand, who is the host of On the Spectrum with Sonia. We love her. We've known Sonia for years, and she is not only a badass, she is a lawyer. She's a therapist. She is a dog mom. She is a marathon runner like no tomorrow. I love you, Sonia. Thank you for being here. You're going to set us straight and tell us what it's like to be on the spectrum with Sonia. Thank you, honey.
Hi, thank you very, very much for having me, and love you too. So I guess, when you're on the spectrum, it's just one thing is to remember the thing is your brain is wired differently, right? So you're not thinking, like other people. So the way that you will interact with other people will come out different because your brains are wired differently, and how you connect with others, how you interact with others. A lot of times you'll miss social cues. You may miss certain things. There's things that are taught that people know intuitively. People who are not on the spectrum, they're going to know certain things intuitively about, certain etiquette, so certain social skills, certain things. And when you're on the spectrum, you have to actually be taught those things, whereas people will know those things intuitively. A lot of times there's also that piece of social blindness, and that you don't understand how you're coming across. And people notice certain things about you that you may not notice for yourself. And being a woman on the spectrum, it's harder because females are more likely to be considered like shy or anxious, or but the thing about it is that's simply not true. I mean, could there be some elements of that? Sure, but there's also a bigger picture that people don't tend to look at, and hence this is also why you see many women getting diagnosed later in life than their male counterparts.
I imagine that you can definitely get things mixed up between personality traits, right? Like you were saying, shyness, and mixed up with actual diagnosis. So how did you get diagnosed? When did you get diagnosed? Like, what was your journey to diagnosis as a female on the spectrum?
So when I was born, my mom always knew that I was on the spectrum, given some of the traits I was showing off as a very young infant. I had issues going from baby food to table food. I was missing milestones. My gait was funny in walking because I used to walk a lot on my tippy toes and things like that. And also, you know, I was very sensitive to certain loud sounds. And I was very, there was just a lot that in socialization was always a problem. I was always given like, just, you know, just going to school was always difficult. The sensory issues were high. There would be times when the school would be generous enough to announce that they would do a fire drill on a certain day, and I would not sleep for days on end. I remember the first time I heard the alarm go off, and it scared me enough to give me that anxiety. And in 1991, so my mom started doing some researching of articles because she at first had problems getting doctors on board to diagnose me as a female. Okay. And she ended up reading this article about a guy who ended up getting ear desensitization treatment. And in 1991, the US had not set up the system yet for ear desensitization treatment. So she called that place in France, and they recommended her to call a place in California. The place in California said, we are not set up quite yet, but here's a number for the place in Montreal, Canada. And they saw my hearing test, and I went there for 2 weeks. And I basically had to wear headphones. It was like a twice a day session. I wore headphones. I listened to a various amount of like tunes, and it would be repetitive tunes to a point where I was actually able to memorize the repertoire of them. Okay. And it was nice to, I actually liked being in Montreal. I loved like the whole idea of like, you know, like the stop sign was written in French, and there was just like a different culture altogether. You know, the accents were, you know, really, I thought they were really, really pretty. And it was a different experience, but growing up, going to school was difficult. Since first grade, I never, you know, teachers were always very on the short end stick with me. And fun fact here, I failed second grade. Okay. So my first and second grade year, I went to a Catholic school, even though we're not Catholic. My parents thought it was a good idea to send me to such a school because they thought better education, whatever. And I was getting my desk dumped in front of kids. I was always made to seem like I was the problem, you know? And so I failed second grade. I had to redo second grade. I went to the public school at that point. The teachers there were not much better, and neither were the kids. So, you know, growing up, I was always the girl that was never invited. You know, I always had trouble with friendships. People always were just mean for no reason, and I had no idea why or what I was doing. But people did give feedback about, you know, overcalling their houses and things like that. You know, parents would ask me to stop calling their freaking house. Okay.
Oh.
And so when my parents moved then to another town when I was 9, things even there kind of repeated in certain ways, different ways. Barely made any friends. And then when I thought I had made some friends, those friends did not last. And things came to a head when I went to middle school because I started acting out a lot. Because, well, first and foremost, you know, I was trying to, you know, at that point, I had all that trauma from elementary. And by the time I got into middle school, still, right, there was lack of, I was not able to join any group, or I was not making friends in the way or connecting with others in the way other people were. And I was bored in class one day, and I made up this cheer, and then lo and behold, I pretty much had like my own kind of repertoire at after lunch. Like, you know, I'd be doing my cheer. It became a routine. It became something that, you know, and then it started going into different, people started asking me to do things during passing periods. And it was just, I was in band in 6th grade, and there was a time when So they asked the band people to go to the halftime show at the football game for the high school and do a flag girl routine. And I did it because I thought, okay, this is interesting. But the thing is, I didn't realize how much of an arm workout it really was. I was like, holy crap, I must have worked out my biceps and triceps a good deal without even having to do push-ups or tricep dips or anything with that, right? After the routine was finished, my mom was kind of videotaping some of the game. Just, she was always the lady behind the camera. And I was like to take pictures, videos, we had countless family videos, all this. And then a group of guys started to corner me, and they said, "Hey, Sonia, do your cheer, do it now." And then they started going in unison, "Do it, do it, do it." And people looked over from the bleachers. My mom came there and said, "Hey, leave her alone." She's like, "What is this? Do it now." I said nothing. And I said, she didn't believe me, that she was smart enough not to believe me, right? So she called the assistant principal on Monday. And the assistant principal said, "Okay, we'll figure out who these people are, but you have to understand, Sonia likes to do this stuff for people." Okay. And my mom obviously didn't approve. And then I started getting into trouble. Teachers eventually started intervening to get people to stop asking me to act up. And then it took me that realization to realize that my attempts for any friendship and connection had backfired against me, that I started getting very depressed. And the first time, and this is one thing that, people on the autism spectrum deal with as well, is the intense emotions that come along with being on the spectrum. So I kind of I talked about suicide for my first time when I was 11 years old. An 11-year-old girl, we were at camp, we went on a field trip at the school. And basically it was to learn about how the Pilgrims lived and stuff like that. And there were campfire skits that everybody had to do. And then after the campfire skit was done, the principal said, "Okay, who wants to go for a walk?" Because he gave the option, you can go back to your cabins for the night, or you can come with me for a walk around the preserve. So I went for a walk, as did a majority of the students, because that was something to do. And I remember I was walking alone because at that point, people have already kind of made it clear they did not want me around them, right? So when I tried to join people in their conversations, they would walk away really fast, or they would kind of ignore me or tell me to leave. And I was walking by myself, and I started screaming about how much I hated myself. So I was an 11-year-old girl back 5th grade, okay? I hate myself. And then one guy turned around, he goes, "Hey, Sonia, do you want to kill yourself?" I said, "Yes." Then I said, I want to kill myself because that's how much I hate myself. And I didn't realize what that all meant at the time, okay? But then I remember I looked at the sky, I saw stars, I saw, it was a really beautiful sky that night, a clear full moon. And I knew, and the one thing I did know about death at that age, right, is that people go to the sky. That's all I knew about what death was. And I'm like, okay, I saw a star, and I'm like, I could live there. I live there. I could live with the planets. I could live with outer space, And the thing is, then that image came a lot in 6th grade again when I started talking about suicide, and I had to take a 2-week leave of absence. They wanted to hospitalize me first. They wanted to put me, and my parents fought against it because the one psychiatrist I went to first kept saying there's no other way. She has to get admitted. She has to get admitted. And so my parents had a colleague that they knew who agreed to treat me outpatient. So he put me on medicine. I was home for 2 weeks. But in all honesty, I should have been probably in an IOP program or some program, or getting intense therapy outpatient while I was at home.
What is IOP program?
An IOP, intensive outpatient program, where you can at least learn some skills. You're not admitted, but at least you're in like groups, or you're learning some skills, or you're learning how, something. But I was not even doing that, And so, my tutor still used to come to the house. We used to do the work together, and I think I went to the museum one day, because that's a great way to still learn. I mean, even if I could go to class, I was still learning something at the museum. And when I got back to school after the 2 weeks was over, because I had to get the letter approving I'm okay and fit to go back to school. So what happened is the school had a meeting with my parents, and they said, "We want to transfer Sonia out of the school. She needs to go to a school for troubled kids," basically. And my parents fought, and my dad beseeched the school one more week. Another week went by, and they had the psychiatrist come in, And the psychiatrist had to advocate on my behalf for me to stay in the school, but then it came at a price where it was that I had to be treated like a prisoner for all practical purposes. So I had to be escorted. I had to report to the special ed room. I had to be escorted either by the teacher or her paraprofessionals to and from class. I would be escorted to class 5 minutes after the bell rang. Then before the bell rang, I'd be picked up from class. I was not allowed to eat in the lunchroom at all for a time.
Yeah.
And they let up eventually, but you know what? They'd have to do, so I'd have to pick people to invite. And the only people I could think of to invite are people who gave me attention from those cheers. That's it, because I didn't know anybody. And other people were very adamant, like, get away from us, right? I'm just, so, but the thing is, even in the restrictions lasted a bit, 6th, 7th grade. By 8th grade, I was already ostracized. And I think, my parents thought, okay, things were a win to be in the school district, but they don't understand the damage I feel that was done at that point, and all throughout high school, I just always felt outed. I didn't have any friends. I was alone.
Wow.
I went to a therapist in my freshman year of high school.
Sonia, your story, Sonia, is beyond anything I can think of. And like, how do you think parents that are dealing with kids and they're showing signs of autism, how do you think, like, especially with your personal story, how do you think what should be done? Like, if you think your child is on a spectrum, autism, like, what do you think parents should do? Or how do you think, if you could go back into your own personal story, how do you think things should have gone for you with your parents, with the education system?
I think there could have been different things done. I think early intervention is key, because the later you wait, the harder it is to reach, right, a person. I was not diagnosed until I was 20, but for me, I think if I could have gone back, I think, having that support early on in life, having that, constant positive support, people being aware, people being more attentive, people showcasing strengths. Because the thing about it is, when you're on the spectrum, people are quick to always showcase what you're not good at, or what you're weak at, or what your flaws are. And that's why, and I'll tell you, like, this is why, these, going back to those intense emotions, right? It doesn't stop when you are in childhood. Things like this, it just looks different when you become an adult. It looks like, so, like my freshman year, like, I was seeing this therapist, okay? And, like anybody, I wanted friends. I wanted to have connections. I wanted, I wanted to be like every other teen, everybody wanted friends in high school. I don't think anybody, would disagree. But the thing about it is, because I'd been so stereotyped, nothing could be done. And then the thing about it is, this therapist kind of went outside of her boundaries and spoke to classmates about me and would tell me what they said without giving names. And then there was one person she tried to facilitate a friendship with, and it didn't work. And the therapist got mad at me, called me attention seeking, accused me of saying I wanted to kill myself when I didn't. I mean, honestly, I became like the next, the witch trial, the Salem witch hunt, right? Where basically, if you remember the story, it was all somebody had to do was say you were an adulterer, and you had to wear the scarlet letter A, from what I remember. I think at least I remember it that way. But, that's, and then I was told things like I was not worthy of having as a friend. And this is from a professional, right? That was supposed to help me. You're telling this to a 15-year-old girl at this point, who is a sophomore in high school, who And for the longest time, I felt a lot of shame about myself, and it was a love-hate relationship with myself. And I thought, and autism first became introduced to us after I'd graduated, because the fourth grade teacher that my parents hired to come to the house to help tutor me and things, she got a memo about a guy who was entering, I think, third grade, and she was part of, I guess, the support staff for him, and he was on the spectrum, and she remembered his traits matching some of mine. And she called my mom one morning and said, "Hey, I think I know a way Sonia can be helped." And then what happened is we went to that meeting, and there were two ladies who were autism specialists. And I told them my story, and they said, you sound like you're on the spectrum, high end. You need to. And then I had a therapist who really pushed me after, in my freshman year of college, to go get a neuropsych evaluation. I got psychologically tested. I was referred then to the clinical neuropsychologist, and it got confirmed in 2002 fall, when I was a sophomore in undergrad. And
Wow.
it was really revealing. It was kind of relieving, because I always knew there was something more to the story than what I was.
You always feel different, because I think there's a lot of people, especially parents. I think probably, if anything, parents or friends are watching this, and they have that diagnosis for their child that they are on the spectrum, and they're devastated. Now, your mom seemed to be an advocate for you from day one, and obviously you're well read, you're smart, you understand those things. What would you tell parents that are getting that diagnosis right now, or you have a friend who's on the spectrum? What advice would you give them?
To embrace to embrace it, and encourage them and bring out the positives in them, because the thing about it is, people are going to be so quick to point to the negatives and say, you're not, you're a burden, you're weird, you don't fit in here, you're just here to take up space. People are so quick to just be cruel, and I think a lot of times people are cruel to things they don't understand, right? Or have an education of. And then this is what goes into ignorance. And, I think that the more a person can learn to be confident at a young age, and learn to embrace autism at a young age, and grow up grow up knowing that, that it's okay to be different and unique. It's okay to be unique, because, I like to look at it as this. Autism Speaks has a puzzle, right? And you have different pieces of like when you do a jigsaw puzzle, each puzzle piece connects, right? In some way, shape, or form. But when you are completing, but you're always going to have those outlier pieces that don't necessarily connect with all the rest. But it's that piece that needs to be in the puzzle to complete the picture. I like to look at it as this, right? We are that puzzle piece for a reason, because we're necessary in society. Let's look at like people who've created, who are well known. Look at Elon Musk, for example. I know he's a very controversial figure for many, but look at, the trailblaze that he's set. Albert Einstein was said to be on the autism spectrum, and without him, we wouldn't have major advances like in science, or discoveries rather, right? So, there are people out there who've, you can do things. And I think that when people can learn that it's okay, you are that necessary piece to complete the picture, I think that's when magic can happen too.
I love that. I have a friend whose son is on the spectrum, and she had recently said to me that, like, you go and get all these tests done, evaluations, and they're constantly pointing out the things he can't do, or constantly pointing out the things that don't measure up. And she said that is so hard to see in your child, because you see them for who they are, which is so much more than what those evaluations say. And my gosh, Sonia, your story, You are the epitome of rising above the low standard that people have set for you in life. You are not only here talking to us so eloquently about your journey that is, I'm sure, hard to relive, right? Time after time. Like, that's traumatic in itself. But you've gone on to be so accomplished too in society, something that I'm sure you were told that you won't be able to do at a young age. And you
No.
did it. You've been a lawyer. You went back, got your master's degree. You're starting your own podcast. You're working full time. You run freaking marathons. Like, you do so much and you have so much to offer this world. How did you find that in yourself? How did you know and connect with that part of you that knew, like, no, I have a lot more to offer that you guys aren't seeing?
Well, here's the thing. I think a lot of this is also the things we don't see, people don't see, that I think is so important. Accomplishments, those are just icings on the cake. But with that comes a lot of pain as well, right? So when you're on the spectrum, a lot of, the support you get in your life is not much in terms of like friends who come for the right reasons, right? Or just close friendships or feeling a sense of community. That's not a lot of times there, right? And it can get very lonely. And this is one thing people don't see is the amount of time you're in your head. Now I'm writing my memoir right now. It's the book, the first draft is almost about to be finished, give or take next couple months, right? And you're right, reliving it is traumatic, but at the same time empowering. And it's the thoughts we don't see, and this is the thing, the 3 a.m., 4 a.m. thoughts I talk about when you're on the spectrum is because you're told, and I was told this even in adulthood, where I told it I was burdensome, okay? And that's why it's hard for me to even be vulnerable to a lot of people now, because I was told that. So back in 2011, I was living in New York, and I had a mental breakdown, and it was 3 a.m., 4 a.m., around that time when I got back to my place. And I was out, chilling with people whom I thought were friends. And the one person whom I thought would be a friend said that, and I was going through a lot at that time. And granted, I knew I needed the help. I knew, and I was on my way to get it. And yes, was I overdoing certain things in terms of partying? Absolutely. And in New York, that's pretty easy to do because bars are open till I think 4. Okay. And I'll tell you this. I mean, I've done things I'm not proud of. I've been cut off by bartenders before. I've been
Wait, so of all of us, probably except for me.
right. No, I've done it. I've done things, but you know what? But at the point, the person said, I can't be friends with you if you're going to be this way and you're a burden, basically. And she said that I couldn't use autism as an excuse for everything, which that is not okay to say to somebody, And, the thing about it is, like, when you hear those kinds of things, and then you've been told throughout your life, right? Every time you try to be vulnerable, because maybe you do want to experience journeys that you're not on. Maybe you do want to know what it's like to go on a date or have a boyfriend or something like that, right? And people tell you, oh, well, you need to do this first, or, you're not you don't live up, basically, because this is the thing. This is one thing that people will tell you is you don't live up.
What do you mean live up? Like
live up to certain standards to get it like everybody else. People will be quick to tell you what you don't have. Okay.
That's the default in the human brain, but that has nothing to do with autism, right? That you're just an easy target, I think. Because you live your label proud. You live your label. I mean, you're always out there and you're advocating, you're doing all these amazing things. And people don't know how to compartmentalize someone that is so strong, so smart, but thinks differently than them. But that could be the same with Tia. That could be the same with Mika. Like Mika and I don't think the same, right, Queen? We don't think the same, but we embrace each other's differences. And the problem is that with someone as bold as you are, Sonia, someone who has educated themselves, done things that nobody else does. Like, how, I want to know, we have a lot of people watching right now. How many people have a law degree? How many people are a licensed therapist? How many people run marathons all at the same time? Nobody. But when I'm feeling insecure and, oh, Sonia does something a little different, I'm going to just go in for the jugular. And that's where you separate the wheat from the chaff, right?
Right.
That is not your friend. And anybody here, that is not your friend. I'm going to tell you right now, you have to be strong within yourself to understand that what you are, who you are, is special. And I was going to swear like Sonia always does. Sonia has not sworn said a curse word this whole time, which I was surprised. But, you're telling just go to heck.
Right. Right. And, you're right. You are an easy target. And here's the thing, too. People, unfortunately, with unhealed traumas like to gravitate towards someone on the spectrum as well. And this is something therapists, law enforcement officers, they don't talk about with people. And I got to warn them right now that they got to start telling people what I'm about to say. And it's not pretty, but it's like,
brace yourself, everybody. Write this down. Sonia's about ready to say something amazing.
Okay. Saying something amazing. It's like ripping wax off a hairy bush. Listen to me.
OMG, please, children, leave the room.
Number one, okay, anybody with unhealed emotional, physical, okay? Now, what happened to them? Do I feel bad about? Absolutely. But here's the thing. One thing I've noticed in my lifetime, and this is one piece of knowledge I picked up on quickly. If you are a person on that here's the thing. Anyone with unhealed trauma will like to gravitate with someone on the spectrum because of the vulnerabilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going to your point, Julie, about being an easy target. Okay. Mm-hmm. The thing about it is there's something about you that they pick up on. And the thing about it is when you're on the spectrum, you may not understand that social cue right away. And it doesn't happen right away. They kind of ensnare you a little bit first, right? They get you under their wing, but then it's when their insecurities start coming out on you, right? Like, and the thing about it, especially if you're an empath, they will get you. I mean, even more, it's easier to ensnare you a little bit because you do try to find some good or some silver lining. But the thing about it is they take it all out on you. Their unhealed parts of themselves. But the thing is, you're not obligated to heal anybody. You're not here to heal anybody. You're not obligated to them. But people want to make you feel like you owe them. Like, you should be grateful. I'm your friend. You should be grateful after all I've done for you. Like, you'll hear things like that. But truth of the matter is you're not obligated to anybody.
Besides yourself.
You are not obligated. Yeah. And and that's the thing. This is one hard lesson I've learned. And the thing about it is, and I worry about, sometimes too, people on the spectrum, if they get caught up in things so easily, what else can they be set up for? And I think this is where more knowledge and education need to be taught especially with, let's say, like law enforcement, for example. They need to be, like if a person on the spectrum gets set up in such a way that they get in trouble with the law, right? What's the reasoning behind it and how do we fix it? Because do we automatically want to throw them in jail, right? Mm-hmm. Or even, I think this even goes beyond the law enforcement's hands. It goes into policy here too, right? How do we treat somebody? How do we deal with somebody who's on the spectrum? How do we, don't
we deal with them like you're a human being? We all have our challenges.
We all have our challenges, and the thing about it is, how do you deal with people where they're at?
How do you meet them where they're at and get them the proper tools and life, if they don't have that intuition, like how do you get them the proper tools and training to get it and develop it as a person?
Mhm.
I think that's where
Right.
like people like you, Sonia, come into play with your work that you're doing and working with people.
Working with people, and also, I think a lot needs to also be addressed as well in terms of, yeah, you meet the person where they're at, but I think also allowing people that safe space to feel vulnerable, allowing the safe space to, when they get in a dark place, they have a place they can go. They have a place they can go, because the thing about it is a lot of people suffer in silence. Accomplishments, here's the thing with the accomplishments too. I know a lot of people, are always like, oh, hey, I know partly I also post about all the running and everything else, but a lot of this also is a transactional way of living at times too, right? Because the thing about it is, you want to feel like you can belong in society. And so here you are, okay? You're going to be, doing things such as, running or whatever your thing is that you do, okay? You're going to be accomplishing it, because the thing about it is, this is one thing that autism allows you to do here. It allows you to hyper focus on things you're interested in, okay? So for me, my running journey began when I lived in New York City, and I used to hear about people posting I used to see posts online on Facebook about running the loop in Central Park. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds so much fun. And it's a 6 mile loop, one loop, right? If you go around one time. I was like, I just think that, I wanted to do that because I thought it was cool. But then lo and behold, I went and told a colleague about it at work. She's like, okay, you need to join New York Roadrunners. You need to. And lo and behold, guess what the race they were doing was? 4 Miles for Hope, where the Autism speaks. Team up. And after that, I was hooked.
Wow.
I got on it, and I love the jerseys. I love seeing, like I'm doing Chicago and New York again this year. And I've done Chicago and New York, that circuit back to back, 2019, 2021, 2022. So it'll be my 4th time for New York City and 9th time for Chicago. And I think I love it. And one thing I will say, and I'm sorry to Chicago, I don't mean it this way in bad ways. I love running in New York City better. Crowds are louder. The pizza's better. Even
Wait, we have to. How can you even say that? You're Chicagoan, but that's here nor there.
Oh my gosh, Sonia, you are so impressive in so many ways. What are the final thoughts you want to leave with the obsessed audience? And a shout out to Tom Flynn and also Peter for your great comments during our live stream. But what final thoughts, Sonia, do you want to leave with the audience?
Just, one thing you're going to learn very quickly when you're on this autism spectrum is you learn to become your own leader. Okay. Leadership, everybody thinks, is something that, okay, I'm this big mega, CEO, and I'm going to speak on stages in front of thousands and thousands of people. But truth of the matter is, it's not about that, right? A leader is someone who inspires someone else. And the thing about it is, autism allows you to do that by the fact that you love to do what you love to do, right? So whether it be helping someone else, whether it be in your career, whether it be in your hobbies, it allows you to do what you love to do. And it also inspires other people. And I feel like, if you're looking for that leader, and this is true for anybody on or off the spectrum, is, what, you can be your own leader too, right? So the first way is, what is it that you love to do that you can make impact with on the world? Okay. So for me, it was always, it's getting my story out there, helping others, with my quirky sense of humor, of course. And I do love to use humor for the pain, because I don't like to cry as much. I don't know. I can't do it. That's one weakness I need to start working on, because I should have not done that joke earlier, but I did anyway. Quirkiness. So what is it about that you can use? What is it? Number 2, make it about someone else. Who do you think that, who can you help be better? Like, how can you help inspire someone? How can you be that person for someone else? Right. In ways that, is unique to them. Right. And how can you use that as a positive thing? And then number 3, I always like to look at it as, believe in something bigger than yourself. I'm not saying, be certain religion or anything like that, but believe that there's a purpose for you. And I feel like it's easier to be your own leader and be a leader for someone else when you realize that you have a bigger purpose. There's something bigger than you in this universe, that there is, that you have something that, you're written for.
Wow. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I mean, incredible. And I mean, we're big fans of On the Spectrum with Sonia. It's an amazing podcast. Make sure you find that on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. The link is in the show notes. I just want to say thank you. Don't forget to subscribe now to our YouTube channel because we're live every Monday and we're on Apple or Spotify or blah, blah, blah. We're everywhere. So make sure you find us, share it with everybody you love, because important stories like Sonia's stories are the ones that are going to change the world. If we mute or don't share these stories, then we are limiting our potential as well as the world's potential. Guys, I love you. Tia loves you. Mika loves you. We love Sonia. Let's go. We'll see you next Monday. Thank you, Sonia. You're amazing.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to Obsessed, where Mika, Tia, and I challenge the thoughts that limit you, where we provide the tools for transformation. Be prepared to be swept away into the raw power of obsession, unlocking secrets and stories behind the insatiable hunger for growth and change. This is more than just a podcast. This is your story. It is a manifesto for those who refuse to settle, who dare to dream, and who are relentless in the pursuit of living a great life. Get obsessed with your life.